Hi, welcome. This is the story of one building, Fountain House, and how it helps to understand the story of the town of Halesowen. To understand this place and how it got from medieval mill to empty office block, you don't need to look too far. Long before Fountain House rose over the Great Cornbow, this ground was already at work, and so was the rest of Halesowen. A medieval mill once stood where Fountain House now stands, part of a wider, prosperous network tied to the town's manor and abbey, grinding grain and later powering early industry across the area. Cornbow itself takes its name from a bend in the River Stour and its long association with the grain trade that once underpinned the whole town's economy. Stand here today and you're standing on ground that's done productive work for at least 800 years, from medieval milling to modern office life. Long before it was a building, this corner of Halesowen was already the town's engine room. Up until the mid-20th century, Halesowen Centre was still a recognisable medieval market town. Narrow, irregular streets, a mix of small shops, houses and workshops. By the post-war 1950s, national planning fashion had turned firmly against this kind of townscape. Traffic congestion, ageing housing, poor sanitation. Halesowen Council pushed to modernise, in line with Birmingham, Dudley and the wider, forward-looking, victorious Britain. This wasn't just pressure on one street or site, it was pressure on the whole region's identity, and that's the world Fountain House was born into. A town centre planners saw as tired but full of potential. From the 1950s through to the 1970s, Halesowen went through the same transformation as many towns across Britain. Older streets demolished, ring roads built, the Cornbow shopping centre was raised, office blocks built to attract white-collar employers. The logic was simple. Old buildings meant inefficiency, concrete and glass meant progress. Fountain House belongs squarely to that wave. A modernist office block with a concrete and brick frame, flat roof, repetitive bay windows, and curtain wall glazing, with little ornamentation. Its beauty was meant to be in its efficiency, its scale. Many locals see it as ugly or oppressive now, but at the time it was a statement Halesowen wasn't just a medieval market town anymore, it was a modern service centre. Fountain House wasn't an isolated project, it was one piece of a town rebuilding its whole identity around cars, concrete and office jobs. What happened on this plot was happening right across Halesowen's centre. The building's sequence of names tells its own story, and it's Halesowen's story too. It began as Cornbow House, tied directly to the ancient Cornbow name that once defined the town and its use. For a time, it became Dorchester House, a rebrand borrowing a grander, more southern-style English name to shed its old civic feel. The same trick landlords still use with names like Belgrave or Mayfair, though it never really stuck with locals, and eventually the owners settled on Fountain House, likely chosen to soften its stark modernist image with a nod to the river nearby. A building trying on new names to sound more prosperous than it felt. That's not a bad way to describe what the whole town was doing at this time. Architecturally, Fountain House is typical of its era. Big, uncompromising blocks where function comes first, grid-like windows, brick and glass, almost no ornamentation. Not a pretty building, but a genuine physical record of post-war planning and design. For decades, Fountain House did exactly what it was built to do. It hosted a run of tenants, professional services, local firms, some public sector office use, providing white-collar jobs in contrast to the area's older industrial work. Sitting between Halesowen's newly pedestrianised shopping centre and the Ring Road, it was about as visible and accessible as an office building could be, placed deliberately at the junction of old and new. In its own quiet way, the building tracked something bigger happening across Halesowen, a slow shift from a town built on industry to one built on office jobs and services. But not everything that happened inside Fountain House was so straightforward. In 2015, it became the headquarters of InTouch Games, an online gambling firm operating brands including Fortune, Slot Factory and Bonus Boss, and one of the bigger employers to move into Halesowen's town centre in years. But between 2019 and 2023, while based here, the company was hit with a series of escalating fines from the UK Gambling Commission. In 1929, a fine of £2.2 million was issued for failing to put in place adequate anti-money laundering and social responsibility controls. In 2021, a further fine of £3.4 million, plus a formal written warning, after the regulator found the firm had failed to act on clear warning signs from at least 7 customers showing signs of problem gambling, and hadn't properly checked the source of funds for higher spending accounts. Finally, in 2023, a massive fine of £6.1 million, its third penalty in 4 years, after inspectors found the company had let a customer deposit and lose over £10,000 in a year with no checks, and took 7 weeks to contact another flagged player. By this point, InTouch Games had paid the Gambling Commission more than £11.7 million in total. In June 2022, InTouch Games was acquired by Sky Wind Group. Just months later, in November 2022, around 50 staff at Fountain House were let go with no warning. Access cards were cut off, told the same day they no longer had jobs. These weren't abstract job losses. These were Halesowen jobs disappearing from a Halesowen address, and remaining operations were moved outside to Birmingham. Fountain House was left empty. The following September, the Gambling Commission suspended the company's operating licence entirely, and InTouch Games ceased trading as an online casino operator. Since then, Fountain House has stood empty. It's been stripped back to a bare shell, services and asbestos removed, with its owners reportedly exploring conversion to residential use, and plans said to include around 90 apartments and parking to match, though no planning permission has yet been granted. The site now sits on the local brownfield register and flagged as suitable in principle for housing. A vast empty office block sitting at the heart of the town it was built to serve. That's not just Fountain House's problem, it's a question mark hanging over the whole of Halesowen's future. The building is still owned by Ruskin Properties, itself owned by Simon Wilson, the former owner of InTouch Games. It's a detail worth remembering. The man behind the company whose collapse emptied this building still stands to profit off the shell he left behind. It's a small reminder of something true across Halesowen more broadly. The town's future isn't only decided by councils and planners. It's tied up in private ownership, in decisions made by a handful of people impacting the whole town's population. In this story, we are focused on one building, but by doing so we get an understanding of the broader story of Halesowen, from medieval mill and market town to post-war redevelopment and a rebrand that never really stuck, to white-collar boom and a gambling scandal, and now an empty shell. This one address has carried almost every chapter of the town's last 800 years. And so the question Halesowen faces isn't really about one building. It's about every empty office space and commercial property like it, built for a style of work that is fading away, just like the problems the town faced post-World War II. Can local leaders turn spaces like Fountain House into something the community actually needs? Or will Fountain House and Halesowen struggle to reinvent themselves for this modern world? Thanks for watching and listening. Please feel free to like and subscribe, watch other channels on our video. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day.